Welcome to the Therapist Book Club, where two therapists dive into their favorite books and the powerful mental health themes they uncover.
Whether you're here for literary inspiration, therapeutic tools, or just some lighthearted conversation, you've found the right place.
So get cozy and let's dive into the pages together.
All right. Hello, welcome back. We are going to be talking about the book How It Feels to Float by Helena Fox. I read this one a while ago and then I reread it when you were reading it for the first time, so it's fresh for both of us. But I'm
Yeah.
curious to know what, like off the top of your head, what were your initial thoughts on the book?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely slaps you in the face.
It does.
Like it comes out strong,
Yeah.
right? Like it just doesn't shy away from the topics that it's going to discuss. And yeah, definitely has a different writing style than like this was written more lyrical. It has poetic pieces to it. Um, maybe even felt like tapestry in these parts. And so yeah, once you start reading it, you definitely get slapped in the face with the mental health themes, with
Yeah.
SA comes in really early in the book. I don't know, what was your first experience with the first few pages there?
I don't remember too much feeling like in the very beginning, but I felt like it was so heavy
Hmm.
throughout the whole thing that it was like it's probably one of the heaviest books I've read. Like just the way it gets into the mind of somebody who's suffering so badly. Um
Yeah.
and so confused, like there was so much confusion. I don't know, it just felt so heavy throughout. It's kind of like the thing that sticks to my mind about this
Yeah,
book.
so this book does have content warnings with it, definitely. I definitely didn't feel like it was trigger warning per se, but content warning of it does review um, sexual assault,
Mhm.
and there's uh, mental health themes, there's grief,
Suicide.
suicide discussion. So yeah. So let's, do you want to give us a quick overview? How would you give a synopsis of this book?
Yes. So the main character is Biz, and she is navigating grief from her father's passing. But the passing happened years before, and she's like when she was a young, maybe like 7, 8 years old, maybe I want to say. But the book is based on when she's like a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And she's coming to realize or coming to terms with the fact that her dad is gone. And what does this mean for her life and how she's going to live the rest of her life?
I think by the end of the book she comes to terms,
Yes. Yes.
but during the book, I don't know if she is coming to terms.
She's trying to find him.
Right, dad, she has hallucinations of him.
Yes.
So dad is present in the talks to her and interacts with her.
This caught me off guard, actually. Like the hallucinations caught me off guard in the fact that in the beginning, I was thinking she's just trying to process this grief. Many people who lose somebody try to find their loved one in other ways. Like like they might sense that like my mother is watching over me, or I heard her laugh in the wind, or like we see our loved ones in grief, in like typical grief in other ways too. So in the beginning, I was like, she's just grieving. Like this is
Right.
just like a grief thing. So the hallucinations, as it kept going on and getting more and more intense and seemingly real, then I was like, oh, something bigger is happening here.
Yeah, and I think some people are metaphysical and spiritual in that way, that they believe that they can still connect with the spirits of ancestors. And but I think what's different is in this book she blurs the line between feeling like her dad is real and still alive, with that she's really talking to him, and yeah, she blurs that line versus knowing that he has passed away and being connected with reality of the situation. Um, and so yeah, some of the critiques of this book is that it's a YA, young adult, which we typically would say is a teenager book, right? 16, and I think if I remember right, the ages are like 16 to 24 or something like that. Um, with the older 20s being, I think they call new adult now. But so this is pretty heavy, I would say, for 16-year-olds,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so yeah.
I want to say it could, for some 16-year-olds. I think for a 16-year-old who's experienced a loss or who has pretty intense mental illness,
Hmm.
I think this book would be great for them to know that they're not the only one.
Yeah. That is I would just say that yeah, so it is it normal for some of these things grieving wise? Yes. And it becomes apparent that this is a person who's experiencing some mental health stuff, I think outside of
I agree. Yeah.
and yeah, she doesn't see, this character does feel like she's questioning a lot of areas
Mhm.
and a lot of things about herself. And like there's questions of sexuality in there. And I don't know if that ever becomes fully defined, and I don't think it has to be for everybody. In the book, they allude to some of this, and and then she does things like, she grabs a guy and says, "Come on, we're gonna go make out,"
Mhm. She's
and
trying
then
to be normal or
yes,
typical.
and
Yes.
then throws up on him.
Mhm.
As she starts kind of getting into it. And this is where he pushes her way beyond her boundaries. And this is it. I hated this part. I
Mhm.
hated this part. I hated it. Then the whole, he was able to turn the whole school against her, like her friend group, because she's the weird one, she's the different one. And what was her friend? Not Grace, not the girl, but the boy.
Jasper.
And that was just such I loved their friendship.
I know.
As they allude to like, in the beginning, I wondered if Jasper had a crush on her,
Mhm.
um, towards the end, I didn't wonder about that anymore, and I thought he did really great. So, that's what happens, like, right in the beginning, right, is Jasper saves her,
Yes.
and, they
But
kind
they're not friends. They're like, they know each other in school. They're not friends in the
I
beginning.
think at the beginning, I think the evolution is friendship, I think, by the end, right?
Yeah, best friends. Like they
Yeah.
become so close and supportive of one another.
Yeah, and that's where we learn a lot about Jasper, right? Is he's able to see her in the way that she's hopeful to be seen,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know? So I definitely would say sometimes I read books and I'm like, hey, this is a really true depiction of something.
This was an extreme depiction. Of
Yes, that's, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Like when we read Turtles All the Way Down, I
it.
was like, that's a really true depiction of severe OCD. This one feels like not many of us will experience what this character experiences, but there are some people out there who will.
Well, yeah, because she goes into like full on psychosis at
Hmm.
the end.
Yeah.
That's pretty rare.
Yes. I
Yeah.
the one thing I think is relatable in this book is no one has ever told her the information that she wants to know about her dad. And that happens, like, I can't tell you how many times I've been in the room with families and told a child that they're adopted, or
Mhm.
that the real story of how things happened, or that people in your life may not be, like, hey, this person is actually stepdad, and it is, I don't think I'm going to give you an opinion because I don't have stats to back this up. I don't think it always benefits kids because um I think this is what we see play out in this book, right? As so this happened young, where I think we probably wouldn't give her all the ins and outs of all the details
Right.
um
About her dad and his
about
own
her dad.
struggle. Yeah.
Yeah. And But as she grows up, I think teenagers start to put like as they gain life experience, they start to put pieces together here and there. But then their brain is putting it together in like the worst way possible,
Yep.
and they have these fears. And I think we saw that play out in this book, right? Like she started to question things, and like she started to she does go to his hometown.
Yeah, her quest to find him there.
Hmm.
I was so wishing that her mom would have just been like, let me tell you about him. Let me show you about him.
Yeah.
And like she didn't need to go on this. Well, maybe she needed to go on this quest. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes we need to go on these journeys to figure things out for ourselves, but she was pretty young to be going on this type of a journey all by
Yeah.
herself. And I was wishing her mom would have stepped in to help.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about grief, right? Is every person's going to experience it different and has different needs with it. And so, like, I was thinking of when we talked about Turtles All the Way Down, she actually didn't talk a lot about, she didn't need to talk, she didn't talk often about her dad, right? It didn't come up a lot. But Biz in this wanted to talk a lot about her dad and experience a lot of her dad. And it was harmful for her to not be able to have those discussions where we didn't really see that play out for in Turtles All the Way Down. And so yeah, I mean, I think that's something to consider when we have I don't know if you ever get asked this question. I do all the time, like, should kids be at funerals? Should kids be at the hospitals? Like, should
How
they,
much should I tell them about their dad,
yeah,
who they
should we talk about it? Should we, and it's just really hard. And like it's so I have some empathy for mom because I think mom was trying to like for her, she probably didn't need all of that as much. But the relationship is different. That was her spouse that passed away versus her dad that passed away, and, um, for Biz, it just was really important. She unlocked some family secrets I don't think she was prepared to understand. She unlocked more information. I can't remember. Did she I remember it's such a pivotal time when she finds out what happens to her dad, how he died. Did somebody tell him or she just put it all together?
I think she just put it all
Or
together
it's either she just put it all together or they finally told us, or she finally acknowledged it herself.
because he killed himself, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Spoiler.
Which
But there were hints towards his mental illness throughout the whole book. Like
yeah,
he had an uncoming or undoing when she was
right.
born, and that like rocked his mental health. Like it was
I
already not
wasn't
very
that surprised. Were you surprised?
about him dying by
Yeah,
suicide.
by that reveal.
Um, yes.
I started to pick up on it because I'm like, they haven't talked about cancer. They haven't talked
Yeah.
about,
Yeah. Oh,
and I think she was foreshadowing in the very beginning. Like, why did we start off the book like this? Like, I
yeah.
think we were trying to foreshadow.
Yeah. I was shocked by it just in the sense that it like there were glimpses of him like coming back to life, like healing, and then he would have a backslide or like have like he would go back into his darkness. And so I was a little surprised because maybe I was just hopeful that like maybe
Yeah.
he died some other way after struggling.
I
I don't
will say, for a second, I was like, "Wait, is dad still alive?"
I know.
Like, they do get you with that one, because
Yeah.
I think that
The hallucinations were real strong.
yeah, right. And I think that just kind of speaks of why she went on her journey because, like, she couldn't get it clear in her mind. Um,
Well, I felt like I think she always knew he was dead, but she was trying to bring him back, was the feeling I got. Like, if I can just find him, I can bring him back to me, which is delusional and like impossible. But like, she was searching for him in all the places that he once was, his family home and the ocean, like all these places. in a way to like keep him with her and to bring him back to her delusionally.
And it's isn't that kind of normal for grief too?
Yeah.
You know, like I compared these two, like turtles all the way down and how it feels to float. There was lots of comparisons. What having the siblings, I think, changed the story for Biz versus the girl in Turtles. I think having the twins busied her mom, and um she just didn't get the same, like, her mom wasn't aware that Biz was as struggling as much as she
Wasn't
was.
she in therapy? I'm trying to remember. I feel like in this book I was a little more impressed with the therapy
Yeah,
that
there was some of that, but I just feel like, in Turtles, they were really in tune. They would really talk about it, like when things like the girl was talking about when things were bad for her. For Biz, like there just wasn't that same.
I wonder, I mean, I'm making this thought or this idea now, but I wonder if the mom thought that like because the death happened when she was younger, that it was resolved, the grief was resolved, and like I don't need to worry about Biz anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but she had kind of a delayed onset of this like delusions and
Yeah. I think when it's complicated grief like that, like I think it is delayed, right? Like it doesn't make sense. Like when you have overdose or drug related death or suicide, I feel like it's really common. I'll see kids when it happens and I'll tell the caregiver, like, just,
watch for this.
yeah,
Yeah.
just so you know, in a few years, it might cut, you might feel like, okay, we're good right now. And they probably are. But as they learn more and understand things more, gonna it's like in EMDR, we call it new information. Like now it's new information that they have to settle up. Like we've come to this conclusion that feels neutral for them. We're kind of making sense of the world as we get older and as they start to understand worldview and have life experiences. Now we have new information we have to fit into this equation.
Okay, I'm also making that fit in my brain as far as like when kids bring up sexuality type things, like what's that body part? And you give them the information and they're settled. That's enough information for them. Or how are babies made? And you say, when mommy and daddy love each other, they make a baby. And that's enough for a while.
Yep.
And then as they get older, they're going to have more life experience that is going to bring up more and more questions.
Mhm.
And if those go unanswered, whether in grief or loss or sexuality, they will fill in the answer somehow.
Yeah.
And what
No,
answers do you want to fill their brains with?
that's absolutely true. Yeah. I think for kids, the answers they want to know is, okay, someone passed away. Where are they?
Yes.
Like, okay, they're in heaven.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's enough. Yeah.
they're in heaven. Okay, they're not coming back. They died. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But as they grow up, they start to understand, what does that mean? Like, so when I
How did they?
graduate, dad's not going to be there. Like, when I get married, dad's not going to be there. Like, when I learn to drive, dad's not going to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, and
And
so,
they
yeah.
start adding those questions like how did he die? Why did he die?
Mhm.
Um, the questions get more complicated.
Yeah. I I listened to this podcast of, it was a psychologist talking, and they were talking about, it was back when there was the shooting at Pulse nightclub, and that one only sticks with me. It actually happened on my birthday. So like
Oh,
I woke up to that news and I was like, "Oh, that feels yucky," you know.
bad juju on my birthday.
I know. But I was like, well, I mean, I like, and it's so sad. Like I don't want to go celebrate my birthday while, like, we've had this gross,
Yeah.
disgusting hate crime. And so anyway, after that, in Orlando, parents were like, we need to talk about this with our kids. How should we talk about this with our kids? These hard topics. And the psychologist was saying that the way to make sure, like, you're talking about these hard topics in a kid-friendly way is to allow them to ask questions. If a child can formulate a question, that's a better inkling that they're going to be able to process the answer. So, how did they die?
Yeah.
That's different, right? Than why did he do it?
Yeah. That's not, those questions are going to be asked at different milestones in the child's life.
Yeah, because our brain development is just not there to, like, actually, it's not even brain development, it's like life experience. The life
Yeah.
experience to start saying, like, wait a minute, just isn't there yet. So I think her experience is really, that part of it is really common, that things would start popping up in the later years like this, even though it had been prior. What I think is hard between the two deaths, right? So I just keep going back to turtles all the way down, but I think it's just like the dead dad thing, and her dad
It
died of cancer. So does that mean anything about her dad that he dies of cancer? Because we
I
have a
was
lot of,
just going to bring up the stigma
yes. And
about
what
the
does
way
that
both
mean?
dads died.
Yeah. What about for Biz's dad? If he died in that way, does that mean something? And I feel like she does try to find that answer throughout the book.
Well, and that probably plays into what was and wasn't talked about in the home about her dad's death, or the connection she didn't have with his family and why he left town. And like, there's so much in this book about mental health stigma, I think, and like the generational patterns of like seeking help or not seeking help. I think she kind of broke that cycle by getting the help she needed in the very end that her dad didn't get for whatever reason.
So if you were talking to a therapist or a parent whose child has experienced some of what Biz has gone through in this book, what advice would you give to them?
Maybe on the part where we were talking about like what information to share with a kid, I would tell the parent, give them as much information as they're asking for. Like we talked about, if they're asking questions, answer them. Don't leave them in the dark. Answer their questions and then ask if they have any more questions and leave it up to the child to kind of lead that discussion. Leave the door open for more questions as they come. Um, but give
I-
don't keep them in the dark.
yeah, I'm like, I would back you on that, and I always prompt parents. I'm like, and do it in the smallest amount of
As
words.
little words as possible.
Because we get into the weeds sometimes when kids like catch us off guard, Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we just have to answer their questions. I like when you said before, like, because if we don't, there just are mechanisms in the brain. Like our brain does not like unanswered questions, and we make up the stories.
Yes.
And so
So
yeah.
if the question when Biz was little was how did dad die?
Mhm.
Or when she's now 16, Mom, I want to know about dad's death. What happened to him? He died by suicide.
See, I think at this age, what she was asking is uh almost a like, what does that mean about me that dad died
Mhm.
that way?
I think she was really asking, why did he leave me?
Hmm.
Why did he leave me? And mom is not going to have an answer for that, except for
Right.
he was suffering. He
Hmm.
thought this would have been a better choice.
I think I've worked with a handful of families that have lost somebody this way, and that's a really common question to ask,
Yeah.
and what did I do? What could I have done? Like we're just trying to make sense of it. And so that's some of the advice that I give to people is to recognize that like this is mental health, right? Like this is what depression can do. This is what untreated, I think based on what her experience is, like it is uncommon to have psychosis as on board like that. The way she described him, I wonder if he also had that experience. Like, could
I
he
think,
have been
yeah.
more of like a bipolar, like a long-term kind of thing versus an episodic like depression or something? But yeah, when it's left untreated, like this is like where cancer can cause death.
Mhm.
I think mental health can cause this, and it's
The
not.
suffering becomes unbearable.
Yeah, to me, I'm like, and it's not a value statement about the family. It's not a value statement about that person. I'm like, that just is like I had somebody mentioned this before. Governor Cox had an initiative that said every suicide is preventable.
Mm.
And I had a problem with that because I'm like, is it, like to me, I'm like, think about this, like think about what that says, right? That says, so if you do your job, like we can prevent suicide, but on the flip side, if you don't do your job, then it's your fault. That could have
It
been
is
preventable.
it is kind of blamey
But
to everybody around the
yeah,
person who dies by
I
suicide. Like
think
you
it's
didn't
that,
do your job.
right. It's not that cut and dry, like episodes of psychosis changes brain chemistry. Like the more episodes of psychosis that you have, the more brain damage can happen and the more likely you are to develop dementia earlier and earlier in your life. So how are we saying that person is like, I mean, I don't know, like that's how you
When I
feel.
was working in the schools, many of the schools that I worked with had goals for preventing suicide, very common. We're going to prevent suicide, and their goals would be zero suicide, which is a great goal, but I would rather a goal be let's increase our mental health services to all students so that all students can get the help that they need. Like, I don't know.
I agree
Yes,
with
but nobody wants anyone to die by suicide.
you. Yeah, yeah. But let's treat the systemic things that
Yeah.
underlie, like I'm like we pass a lot of bills and politicize people's identity. And like, I don't know,
Mhm.
like what about if we address that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That might have a positive impact, and
Well, and I think that the book kind of plays like talks about that in a way when she goes on this quest to find her dad in his hometown and like how he left because he was, I don't know, there was some sort of stigma around him or some sort of negative view of him that he had to get out of there.
well, there was abuse, right? Remember that she found out about his dad.
That's
There was
right.
abuse in that, which, yeah, is kind of the generational trickle down of,
Mhm. And if he had been able to get the support he needed,
yeah,
what could that have done? Yeah, I don't know.
yeah. I like this book, I think it had really interesting, like, literary values to it. I think it was a different book to read than your typical like prose, like story, memoir stuff,
Did you say to me like halfway through, like, what is the point of this book? Does
I
she just have like
definitely
a terrible life and that's all we're learning about is this terrible
that
life?
is exactly what I think, but I was like, now here's the rest of my sentence is I don't think it was my favorite book. I think it was an interesting read for the literary stuff for me personally, because I really was like, I'm so lost in her delusions and like I can't keep up with all like it's like The Pursuit of Happiness, that movie. I'm like, it just gets worse and it just gets worse and it just gets worse and then what, And I'm like, but here's the thing, like English teachers would probably love to use this as a teaching book, but you'll never get it past all the parents, like with the content of it.
I I loved the poetry of this book.
Hmm.
It made me feel. It made me feel, yeah, it just made me feel something. And
It
not a lot
does.
of books make me feel. More of it, it's just books are usually just stories and like I can read it and be done with it and forget about it. This book was like heavy. It was very heavy and made me feel.
The problem for me was sometimes it made me feel confused. Like,
Yeah.
and the term in you learn it in social work school, folie douce.
I never read that. I've never learned
Oh,
that.
it was in my DSM course. And I remember thinking, like, how does this happen? Folie douce is like, you share the delusion.
Oh,
And I'm like, I'm sharing this is folie douce. Like, I'm now delusional with this character because I don't know what's going on.
yes. I mean, yeah, I like that word for that book. That
Yeah,
matches.
I definitely got, and to me, I'm like,
But I think it's a mark of a good book that it pulls you
that's
into
probably what you
it.
liked.
Yes, I liked that.
And I did it. I was like, what is happening? I did not consent to this.
I think I read this book on an airplane and I pulled it out. It was like for the first time I read it on an airplane. I pulled it out of my bag and the girl next to me was like, "Oh, you will love that book." And I was like, "It's on. It's on." A perfect stranger just told me I'm gonna love this book.
It's always so nice when you find like book besties out in the wilds, like
I know. Well, what would you rate this book?
I on Goodreads, I did rate it, and I am really sorry to say I rated it a 3.
Oh, I'd give it a 4.5.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I Yeah, I agree with you on this, your sentiments of it was an extreme version of a mental illness, one that isn't very common and maybe not as relatable to most like everyday people, but
Mhm.
it was very interesting to see like the first person view of somebody with delusions and psychosis.
Yeah. And
But
there's gonna be some people out there who love it.
yeah, you can
Uh,
be on my team.
I was
Team.
gonna say I liked Fourth Wing and you didn't, so like we're not gonna. But yeah, to me it went a little. I was texting you and you're like, keep going, because I'm like, man, I'm getting so lost in the like, delusions and the mental illness and all of it. It was, but
That's a yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode. We'll see you guys next time.
see you next time.
Yeah.
Time.
Thanks for joining us on the Therapist Book Club. We hope today's conversation inspired you to explore new stories and perspectives.
Don't forget to follow us for more episodes, share your favorite books with us, and join the conversation on how books and mental health connect on our social media channels.
Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, your story matters.